It was a Tuesday morning. Cold, silent. The kind of silence that doesn't calm you down. It warns you. I remember the smell first. Not the stench of death. No, that would come later. I'm talking about the metallic bite of fresh blood, mixed with the faint trace of perfume. Expensive. Feminine. Whoever she was. She hadn't planned to die that morning. I got the call at 6:42 a.m. Possible homicide. Female victim. West Melrose Avenue. Unit 2A. When I arrived, the paramedics were already there, but they weren't moving fast. That's always a bad sign. You move fast when there's hope. When there isn't, you just wait for paperwork. Her name was Olivia Hart. 31. Marketing executive. Lived alone. No signs of forced entry. The front door was locked from the inside. I stood over her body for a while. She was lying on her side, half on the couch, half on the floor, a glass of red wine untouched on the coffee table, a record still spinning in the corner. Billie Holiday, I'll Be Seeing You. Irony tend to enjoy murder scenes. No visible bruises, no blood on the skin, just a single line of dried crimson coming from her nose. Cardiac arrest? Aneurysm? No, I'd seen enough to know better. Her eyes were wide open, but not in fear, in surprise. The kind of expression people make when they recognize someone in their final second. Then I saw it, under her fingernail. A hair, thick, dark, male. Crime scenes are puzzles. And I was trained to spot the missing piece, the irregularity that doesn't shout but whispers. In this case, it was a thermostat, set to 59 degrees Fahrenheit. In LA, that's not just cold, it's unnatural. Like she wanted to preserve something. Or someone did. I found something else too, a time-stamped voicemail, left on her phone at 3:11 a.m., exactly 47 minutes before her estimated time of death. It was from her ex-fiancé, Marcus. The message said, "Liv, I know you're still awake. I'm parked outside. We need to talk. Please, just give me 3 minutes." 3 minutes. The irony was surgical. Marcus was arrested 2 hours later. But the guy looked like hell, hadn't shaved, hadn't slept, swore he didn't hurt her. I begged her to come down. She never did, so I left. He had an alibi. Security footage showed his car pulling away from the building at 3:17 a.m., which matched the phone record. And that's when the case should have ended. But it didn't, because at 3:12 a.m., the elevator camera caught something chilling. A second figure entering the building, hooded, head down, moving with purpose. Not Marcus. Taller, leaner, confident. The feed was glitchy, but one frame caught part of his face. Enough for facial recognition to light up. His name was Daniel Rhodes, Olivia's upstairs neighbor. I went up to his unit. Knocked. No answer. I noticed a faint trail, something reddish, smeared across the base of his door. I drew my weapon. Breached. Empty. The place was spotless. Too spotless. No personal items. No photos. Not even dust. Like someone had just erased themselves. But then I found the trash. Buried under takeout wrappers and crumpled napkins. There it was. A receipt. A hardware store. Duct tape. Gloves. Drain cleaner. And one item that didn't make sense. A meat thermometer. We found him 3 days later in a motel 2 states away. Calm. Smiling. She wasn't supposed to be home, he told me. I just wanted to feel what it was like. To be inside someone else's life. Just for a moment. But she surprised me. No remorse. Just curiosity. Daniel had been watching Olivia for months. He hacked her calendar. Her emails. He knew her routines better than she did. But that night, she canceled a dinner last minute. Stayed home. That wasn't in his plan. She heard him entering. Came out. Called his name. He froze. She recognized him. So he improvised. The toxicology came back. Fentanyl. Mixed with chloroform. Fast. Quiet. Clean. But here's what haunted me. The call from Marcus. If Olivia had gone downstairs, just opened the door, she might still be alive. 3 minutes. That's all it would have taken. And the part that stings? Marcus blamed himself. You could see it in his eyes when I told him. He kept asking. If I had stayed longer, if I had shouted louder. Guilt is heavier than any evidence bag. It doesn't fade. It ferments. I've seen hundreds of bodies. I've walked through blood like it was spilled wine. But this one, it stayed with me. Because sometimes the difference between life and death isn't a bullet or a blade. Sometimes it's 3 minutes. Too late. It was the kind of case they don't assign to city boys. Too quiet, too rural, too soaked in secrets. But I wasn't assigned. I was requested. Sheriff Nolan from Pine Ridge County called me directly, said it was something his team wasn't equipped to understand. That's usually code for it's going to haunt you. The property was isolated, an old cattle farm, over 70 acres. No neighbors in earshot, no cell signal. Just dirt, trees, and an aging red barn with a roof that sagged like tired shoulders. The call came in at 3:14 a.m. from a landline. The voice was shaky. A man panicked. There's something in my barn. I heard a child crying, but I don't have kids. Then silence. We arrived just before sunrise. Fog clung to the ground like a second skin. The house was locked. No answer, but the barn door was wide open. You have to understand, barns carry a smell, not just of hay or old wood, but of history, decay, forgotten things. And this one had something else, something metallic, sharp, blood. We found him inside. Levi Granger, 46, divorced, lived alone. He was hanging, rope around the neck, tied to a ceiling beam, but his feet touched the floor just barely. Enough to suggest hesitation. Enough to tell me he didn't plan this entirely on his own. There was something else. Underneath him, scratched into the dirt floor in frantic lines. It wasn't a child. The body had been there for maybe 2 hours. But here's the twist. The call had come after his estimated time of death. That meant someone else was there. Someone who wanted us to find him. We searched the barn. No sign of forced entry. No small footprints. No toys, nothing that could have made the crying sound. But then, deep in the hayloft, we found it, an old baby monitor. Still on, still buzzing. I checked the other end. Found in the main house, upstairs in the attic, buried under a pile of dusty quilts and paint cans. The receiver was wired into an outlet. It had a tape inside, one that had been playing on loop. It wasn't a live cry. It was a recording. A damn recording of a child crying. And that's when the pieces started to grind into place. Levi Granger was no stranger to loss. His daughter, Ellie, had gone missing 11 years earlier, vanished during a visit to her grandparents. Barn was locked. No sign of struggle. The case went cold. He never left that house after. Kept the room the same. Spoke about her in the present tense. Still believed she'd come back. We dug through his records, diaries, dozens of them. One entry stood out. I heard her cry again last night, in the barn, just like when she was a baby. It wasn't grief. It was obsession. I requested access to the original missing persons file. Something about it had always bothered me. Ellie didn't just vanish. She disappeared from a locked room. No forced entry. No broken windows. But the old barn had a tunnel. Forgotten, hidden under a false panel in the floor. It led to the woods. And out. Someone had taken her. But it wasn't Levi. In fact, Levi might have seen it and blocked it out. Back in 2012, there were 2 people living on the property. Levi and his brother, Martin. Unemployed, erratic, had a history of behavioral issues, including a sealed juvenile record. Martin disappeared shortly after Ellie did. Said he couldn't deal with the grief. Moved upstate. Changed his name. We tracked him down. Took a few days, but we found him, living under a new identity, working at a lumber mill. When confronted, he cracked faster than expected. I didn't hurt her, he said. I just I wanted to be close to something purer. He had kept her hidden for 9 days. In the tunnel, gave her food, spoke to her like a father. But when she got sick, fever, dehydration, he panicked, buried her behind the barn. We found the remains, tiny bones wrapped in a blanket with a name, Ellie stitched in pink thread. But here's the part that burns. Levi never knew. He thought he'd heard her cries over the years, thought maybe she was still alive. But it wasn't real. It was Martin, returning to the barn, playing the tape, re-triggering the trauma. For years, he said it made him feel close to her. I didn't have a grave. This was the only way. So Levi started believing, started writing, started unraveling. And in the end, when he heard that cry again one last time, it broke him completely. But here's the psychological snap. The call that night wasn't Martin. We traced the phone. It came from inside the house. Time-stamped after Levi had already hung himself. The sheriff's deputy turned white when I told him, because there was no timer on the landline, no way to delay a call, which means someone or something picked up that phone and wanted us to find what was left. The rational side of me says there's an explanation, a glitch, a setup, something human. But late at night, when the world goes quiet, I still hear that tape. And every damn time I wonder, what if it wasn't a cry from the past? What if it was a warning? And we were just too late again. Some cases don't start with blood. They start with a sound. A creak where no one should be walking. A whisper behind drywall. Or, in this case, a thud beneath the floorboards. It was a missing persons call. Routine on paper. 17-year-old Emily Carson vanished from her home in a quiet Connecticut suburb. No break-in. No note. No known enemies. 1 minute she was in her room. The next gone. I was brought in 2 weeks later, after the local search came up dry. The house felt frozen in time. Her backpack still by the door. Homework on the kitchen table. The kind of details that whisper. She didn't plan to leave. Her mother, Denise, insisted something was wrong with the house. I hear things at night, she said. Footsteps. Breathing. Sometimes scratching. The kind of statements most cops shrug off. But I've learned to listen. Emily's bedroom was upstairs. Pristine. Posters of indie bands. Polaroids on the wall. But there was a spot on the floor, right under her bed, where the wood didn't match. Slightly darker. Slightly warped. I pulled the rug back and knocked. Hello. 10 minutes later, I had the board up. Dust. Nails. And something wrapped in an old grocery bag. A notebook. Spiral bound. Worn. The kind of thing you'd overlook in a high school locker. But this one was different. Every page was filled with a tight, anxious script. Drawings, maps, and symbols, dozens of them, scratched like nervous habits into margins. The first line chilled me. If they find this, it means they're inside. At first, I assumed delusion. A teenage girl spiraling into paranoia. But the deeper I read, the harder that theory became to hold. She wrote about the man in the crawl space. Said she heard him breathing at night. That he whispered her name. That he knew things he shouldn't. Her parents thought it was stress. Maybe even hallucinations. But Emily didn't stop there. She started documenting sounds. Sketching symbols she claimed appeared on her mirror in condensation. Describing smells, rotting meat, mold, iron. I took the notebook home that night. I don't usually do that. But something about it crawled under my skin. That evening, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the symbols. One of them stuck with me, a circle with 3 vertical slashes, evenly spaced. I'd seen it before, in a homicide case, for years earlier. Different state. A girl about the same age was found dead in her bedroom. Cause, undetermined. No signs of struggle. No forced entry. But under her bed, carved into the floor, was that exact same symbol. I pulled the file. Both girls had something else in common. Each had reported hearing someone in the house weeks before vanishing or dying. Each case was dismissed as psychological distress. This wasn't coincidence. This was a pattern. I went back to the Carson house the next morning, told Denise I needed full access to the crawl space. She hesitated. It's sealed. My husband boarded it up years ago. Said it creeped him out. Creeped him out? Interesting. We removed the boards. The entrance was barely wide enough to slide through. I crawled in with a flashlight, breathing dust and insulation. And there it was. In the farthest corner, buried in the dirt, half rotted and wet, was another notebook. Not Emily's. This one was older, faded, water damaged, written in a man's hand. Inside, he described her. Emily, by name. He described her routine, her room, what she wore when she was alone, how she smelled. I came up gasping, nauseous. DNA analysis confirmed it. Male, unrelated to the family, likely in his 40s, and recent. So now we had two things. Proof that someone was living beneath the house, and that Emily had discovered it, alone. But there was more. Hidden in the back of the man's notebook was a crude map, a network of crawl spaces, access points, ducts and attics connecting multiple homes in the neighborhood. He wasn't just in their house. He'd been in several, and no one ever saw him. I alerted the police immediately. Full sweep. They found fresh drag marks under another house 2 blocks away. Torn fabric, hair, a small earring. Emily's. They found her 2 days later. Alive, drugged, dehydrated, locked in a hidden compartment behind a furnace. She couldn't speak for a full 36 hours. But when she did, her first words were, he said, I found his secret, so now I had to be part of it. They never caught him. He disappeared, left behind nothing but notebooks, symbols, and whispers. The media ran wild with it, called him Crawler, speculated it was some drifter, a local ghost story come to life. But I've seen enough to know when a man studies victims the way he did, when he builds tunnels like veins beneath a neighborhood, that's not madness. That's patience. That's purpose. And I don't think he's done. So if you hear a thud under your floor tonight, don't assume it's the house settling. Check, because some secrets don't want to stay buried, and some predators don't knock. They say smell is the strongest trigger of memory. I believe that now, because every time I catch a whiff of lemons, cleaning fluid, candy, even soap, I'm back in that room, back in that silence, back where she died. It started as a favor. I was retired, technically, but when a detective you train calls and says, I've got something that doesn't make sense, you listen. The scene was a modest single-story home in Queens. A young woman, Natalie Harmon, 32, was found dead in her bathtub, eyes open, no signs of struggle, no water, just dead. Coroner marked it as sudden cardiac arrest. Unusual for her age, but not impossible. Case closed, except for one thing. The entire house smelled like lemons. Not air freshener, not the kitchen, every room, every surface. It was so strong that it hit you in the throat. And yet, there wasn't a single lemon product anywhere in the home. No sprays, no oils, no soaps, nothing. I asked Detective Jenkins what made him call me. He hesitated, then said, the first responder found something. It's strange. Natalie's laptop was still open. On it was a single tab, a draft email to no one. It said, it's back. I know the smell. It's watching me. I felt it then. That instinct. The cold under the skin. She hadn't died by accident. She'd been expecting it. I dug into her background. No mental health history. No drug use. She was a behavioral therapist. Quiet life. No enemies. But she had filed a police report 6 months earlier. Said someone had broken into her apartment. No forced entry. Nothing stolen. Just everything in the wrong place. And the smell. She mentioned it there too. Lemons. At first, I thought maybe we had a serial offender with a calling card, a chemical signature. So I pulled up older cases. Women, same age range, unsolved deaths in their homes. And I found it 3 other cases in the last 2 years. Each woman found alone. No wounds. Eyes open. Each house reeked of lemons. That wasn't a coincidence. That was ritual. But here's the kicker. None of the homes had lemon products either. I visited Natalie's house again. Alone this time. I needed to feel the scene. Walk the path she walked. Bathroom, kitchen, bedroom. Nothing out of place. But in her closet, I noticed something odd. A thin line of bleach along the baseboard, as if someone had cleaned just a narrow strip of floor. I pried it up. Underneath, taped to the wood, was a cassette tape. Unlabeled. I had to dig up an old player from storage to listen to it. It crackled, hissed, then a voice, hers. If you're hearing this, then you found the tape. I can't sleep anymore. I smell it even when I leave. I thought it was all in my head, but it followed me to my sister's house. I saw it once. Not clearly, just a shape in the doorway. But it always smells like lemons, like it's already cleaned the place for something. She goes quiet, then whispers, I think it's cleaning for death. I sat there in the dark, that tape looping in my ears, trying to rationalize what I'd heard, trying to not believe it. I interviewed her sister. She didn't want to talk. But when I mentioned the lemons, her face went pale. She said Natalie had stayed with her for 2 nights. And on the second night, she woke up to the smell so strong it made her gag. The hallway light was flickering. Natalie was already awake, sitting straight up in bed, just whispering, "Don't open the door. Don't let it know you're awake." The sister thought she'd lost her mind. But after that night, Natalie went home. Said she'd rather die in her own space than bring it somewhere new. And she did. There was one final piece. Jenkins called me a week later. Another woman. Similar case. Same lemon scent. But this time, there was a camera. Motion activated. Set up in the hallway for pet monitoring. And at 3:12 a.m., the feed caught something. A flicker. A blur. Something tall. Thin. Featureless. Walking past the doorframe. Just once. And then the camera shut off. The last frame before it cut, the hallway light turning yellow. Not flickering. Changing. We had the footage analyzed. No editing. No tampering. And yet the signal just dies the second that thing passes. Like it sensed the recording. We don't know what it is. A person? A pattern? Something psychological? All I know is this. Every woman who smelled lemons died within 72 hours. No signs of struggle. No escape. Like something preparing them. And now, when I walk past my living room, sometimes I catch a scent. Just faint. Citrusy. Clean. And when I do, I leave. I don't care if it sounds paranoid. I don't care if the neighbors talk. Because the last thing I want is to be the next one it cleans for. It wasn't the volume of blood that disturbed me. It was the fact that there was any blood at all, because the victim's body had no wounds. The call came in on a gray Thursday morning. Rural house, 20 miles outside of Albany. A single occupant, deceased. Female, 41. Name, Hannah Ellis. Unmarried, former high school biology teacher. Quiet, no history of violence or mental illness. Found by her younger brother, Evan, who hadn't heard from her in 4 days and drove out to check. I was asked to consult because the responding officers couldn't explain what they saw. The scene was pristine. No signs of forced entry. No struggle. The back door was locked from the inside. Windows sealed. No fingerprints, but hers. All electronics and valuables untouched. Hannah was found lying on her back in the middle of the living room floor. Eyes wide open, mouth slightly parted. No trauma. No bruising. No ligature marks. She was barefoot, wearing sleep clothes, and looked surprised. But here's the part that chilled everyone. Under her head was a pool of blood, not a massive one, but fresh, bright red. It had soaked into the carpet beneath her hair. Only there was no source. Not a scratch. Not a single broken vessel. The autopsy confirmed it. Zero bleeding, internal or external. Yet the blood was real. Human. Same blood type as hers. But it wasn't hers. DNA results came back 2 days later. Male, mid-40s. No match in any known database. Not a relative. Not a partner. A ghost. And then we found the second sample. On the bathroom faucet, under the cold water handle, there was a faint smear, barely visible to the naked eye, but there, same blood type, same unknown male DNA. She lived alone. I reviewed the crime scene photos again. The home was obsessively clean. Toothbrush perfectly placed. Fridge organized by color. Pillows fluffed at right angles. It looked less like someone lived there, and more like someone maintained it, ritualistically. But there was one item that stood out. On the kitchen counter, surrounded by perfect order, sat a sticky note. Crooked, handwritten. It's still here. I can't find where it comes from. But the blood, it's closer each night. I asked the brother about it. Evan shook his head and told me something I haven't stopped thinking about. She called me a week ago. Said her house had started bleeding. I thought he was speaking metaphorically. I wasn't prepared for what he showed me next. He pulled up a text from Hannah, sent 6 days before her death. It read, "Found blood on the baseboard in the guest room. No wound. No animal. Woke up at 3:14 a.m. to a drop hitting the floor. I checked the ceiling. Nothing. The house bled." At that point, we had no choice but to widen the scope. We pulled house records. Nothing stood out. Built in 72. No major renovations. But an older officer remembered a case in that area. For years earlier. Different house, same street. Man in his 50s found dead in his basement. Cause of death? Undetermined. Found lying in a dry puddle of blood. No wounds. Same blood type. Unknown male, mid-40s. Now we had a pattern. 2 properties, same street. Same kind of death, and both with blood that shouldn't be there. But here's where it gets worse. We rechecked Hannah's house top to bottom. In the attic, wedged behind insulation, we found something the original team missed. A glass jar, sealed with black tape. Inside, a folded Polaroid photo. Face down. The back was marked with a date. February 2nd, 1995. The image showed a man, partially obscured by shadow. Shirtless, lying on a wooden floor. Blood under his head. No visible wound. Same posture as Hannah. We scanned the image, enhanced it. His eyes were open. We ran facial recognition. No match. But the image wasn't taken in Hannah's house. The wood was different. Older. Unvarnished. More like a barn floor than a home. But the blood pattern was identical. 3 days later, our lab technician quit. She said the DNA samples began to degrade unnaturally fast. She left one on the desk overnight and returned to find the vials shattered. The desk sticky with something that wasn't blood. Black, viscous, reeking of metal and ozone. I returned to Hannah's house one last time. Alone, I needed to understand why she died. Why there was blood that didn't belong to her. What she meant by closer each night. I stood in her living room, right where her body had been, turned off the lights, closed my eyes, waited, and then I heard it, a single drop, like liquid hitting fabric. I opened my eyes, looked up, nothing, but when I stepped forward, my boot squelched. There, fresh and warm, was a smear of red. I wiped it, tested it, same blood, same ghost. We never closed the case. Because how do you write a report that says, "House bleeds stranger's blood at 3:14 a.m.? But I moved out of my own house the next week. Because 2 days after standing in hers, I woke up to a red stain on my pillow. Not from my head, not from my body, but the exact same unknown male DNA. The blood that shouldn't be there is now in my home.